species had similar acquisition. Apis dorsata bees could also exhibited short-term and long-term memory of the training, and they could distinguish novel order from the trained order. So having seen that Apis dorsata can be trained in the PR conditioning, we used Apis dorsata to study if oscillations facilitate better order discrimination. So we have seen in this experiment that abolishing oscillations impairs fine order discrimination, but there is no theory which explains how oscillations aid in fine order discrimination. And when application of picrotoxin not just abolishes oscillations, but it also affects the PN firing rate. Picrotoxin increases the PN firing rate, which in turn increases the input going to the KCs, and the KC firing rate also goes up. So it is seen in this experiment with repeated trials, the PN firing rate is reduced. So when the bee is subjected to olfactory training conditions, in the very first trial, there are no oscillations present, and in the later trials, the oscillations build up. But when we use 10 minutes ITI, there is a decay in the oscillation, and the system does not have oscillations in any of the training conditions. And it is also shown that with increased order concentration, the power of the LFP oscillations goes up. So when there is increased concentration, the drive to the AL is more, AL or the antennal lobe is higher. So the GABA activity kicks in and the PN firing rate is controlled. So in both this phenomenon, we see that gain control is operational. Along with increase in oscillations with repeated trials, there are other phenomena which happen. Singh and Joseph in their study have shown that in the very first trial, the LFP has a huge deflection, and this deflection or the low frequency component of the LFP decreases with repeated trials. The high frequency component or the oscillations goes up with repeated trials. So we can use this measure of change in deflection from the first trial to the second trial, which also correlates with the LFP oscillatory buildup as a measure of oscillations, as the oscillations per se are very difficult to record in species other than locus. So we confirmed this phenomenon in Apis dorsata too. We developed an experimental design where we controlled for the amount of oscillations present in the system by varying the order concentration and the ITI. So there were 6 different conditions where the bees were trained. They were trained either with 2-minute ITI or 10-minute ITI, and with 100%, 10%, and 1% order concentration. In any given day, we divided the bees equally among all these conditions so that we could control for the variability. So we used the standard protocol with the ITI of 2 or 10 minutes. There were 6 trials, and 60 minutes after the training, there were 3 random test trials. The bees were tested with the trained order, an order similar to the trained order of the same concentration, or a totally different order, which we used geraniol for this situation. So we found that the bees were able to acquire the learning in all the conditions, and we measured the responses of the bees to the trained order, similar order, and the novel order. The responses to the similar order and the dissimilar order were significantly different from the responses to the trained order in all the conditions. And in the 2 minutes, 10% condition, there was maximum discrimination from the trained order to the similar order. For all these conditions, we also recorded the local field potential of the mushroom body. We recorded for 2 trials, and there was either 30 seconds, 2 minutes, or 10 minutes time interval between the 2 trials, and we used 100%, 10%, and 1% order concentration of hexanol. So we obtain the response of the local field potential. The blue trace represents the deflection of the first trial. The red trace represents the deflection of the second trial. As we go from left to right, we have 30 seconds ITI, 2 minutes ITI, and 10 minutes ITI. As we move from top to bottom, there is increasing order concentration of 1%, 10%, and 100%. Here, we present the difference of the LFP from the first trial to the second trial. The black trace is the mean difference of the LFP from the first trace to the second trace. And we can see that the mean difference of the LFP reduces as the ITI increases, and the mean difference increases as the order concentration increases. We measured the area under the curve for all these conditions, and as expected, 30 seconds 100% order concentration condition had the maximum area under the curve, and in the trained conditions, we had the 2 minutes ITI and 100% order concentration condition had the maximum area under the curve. The mean deflection per se increased with order concentration as expected. So when we look at the results from the training, the discrimination was maximum for the condition of 2 minutes ITI and 10% order concentration. And the change in deflection, which is a measure of oscillation buildup, was more in 2 minutes and 100% order concentration condition. So to validate our theory, we repeated this experiment where we measured the LFP again for these two situations. And again, we found the 2 minutes ITI and 100% order concentration condition, the deflection between the first and the second trial is more. That is, the oscillation buildup is more in the 2 minute 100% condition. So here we have a situation where fine discrimination was more in one condition, and the oscillatory buildup, which is a reflection of the change in deflection, was higher in another condition. So we conclude that the system is performing better in a situation where it has a sufficient input, as in the low concentration, there is low input, and in high concentrations, the system has to do gain control. So the system is doing better in the middle situation where it has sufficient input and it has to do lesser gain control. To summarize, there are no theoretical explanations as to how oscillations help fine discrimination of orders. However, there are existing theories on gain control enabling efficient coding. In models, it is seen that if we incorporate gain control in discrete event systems like neuronal networks, invariably oscillations show up, even if they may not serve any coding purpose. So we propose that the system performs best when it has to do gain control, less gain control, irrespective of presence of oscillations. So I thank my supervisor, Dr. Joby Joseph, for his very valuable guidance and help at every step, and my lab mates, Shalini, Shilpi, Meenakshi, and Shivraju, for always standing by me and being a pillar of strength. Thank you in Poland for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Sandhya. I am now to invite questions. There is one question. Saravanan says, is it with Apis cerana or Apis dorsata? I'm sure it is Apis dorsata. Yeah, that's what you want. Yeah, so Saravanan is asking, if nice study, but the study is with Apis cerana or Apis dorsata?
It's with Apis dorsata.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so everyone thought. So there's another question. Was there a change in how fast the state transition in electrophysiological signatures between the treatments, and what was the frequency content? Shall I repeat? Was there a change in how fast the state transition in electrophysiological signatures between the treatments, and what was the frequency content?
like how fast it changed?
Yeah, Aditya, you may unmute and quickly ask this question if you want to seek an explanation.
So what I mean to say is how fast, sorry, I'm talking from Aditya's phone. I'm Reshma from Hema's lab. So was there a change in how fast, like depending on the concentration of your stimulus, you were saying that as the electrophysics, like with the increase in the number of trials, one goes from this dip to the like the oscillatory state, right?
Yes.
So how fast, was the concentration in the stimulus and the lesser number of intertrial, like lesser time of intertrial interval, doing some kind of temporal summation is what I was interested in asking. Like that's why I was asking how fast this transition from this dip-like structure to the oscillation, this transition was taking place as you increase the amount of stimuli.
Yeah, these oscillations are not observed in many of our recordings. It's quite difficult to record these oscillations.
But Sandhya, you can show that transition rate of change, no? That build-up of oscillation graph.
Yes, sir.
I think that's what she wants to.
So in Apache dot setup, there were only ones that we could record the oscillations, because the oscillations are very hard to record, and mostly what we measured is the deflection, and the deflection was higher for higher concentrations when compared to the lower concentrations. But the deflection set off at the very offset of order presentation. There is no time gap for any given concentration. I don't know if I am able to answer to you. Otherwise,
right side graph you can get, within few trials, the oscillations build up. If you look at the blue.
Yeah. So if I think you have got your answer, but if you have further, you require further clarification, please be in touch. In fact, you can, anyone can, write their question to our email, which I have put in at the chat box, and we can then forward this question to the speakers, who can also respond leisurely after this seminar is over. Also, Professor Dr. Brockman has a question. Do your results suggest that the olfactory system works better at low order concentration?
At optimum order concentration is what we propose, sir. At very low order concentrations, the system doesn't have sufficient input, and the system has to deal with low input. And at very high concentration, the system has to do gain control. So at the middle operating level, the system does best.
All right.
Pradeep, can I just ask the question?
Sure, please.
So your optimal concentration is a low concentration. Yeah, sometimes people do learning experiments and they just have very high concentrations, right? So and if I understood you right, I mean that might be even kind of then lead to different results. Is that what you are saying?
So I could get you.
So how to say, you are saying optimal concentration, but what? So how to say? My question is whether the optimal concentration is actually low compared to 100% concentration.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So
yes.
like I'm not talking about low detection thresholds. I'm talking about
it is lesser than the 100%.
and it's strongly lesser than 100%. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So some people kind of like take an odor out of the tube and put and condition the bee. So and that concentration is probably very high if they don't control it. So then basically they get different results in the learning experiment if they actually would have used lower concentrations.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandhya and Axel. So with this, let us thank Sandhya for her excellent presentation, and time to call upon the next speaker, Sangeeta. Sangeeta is going to talk about nectar robbing and how that interferes with pollinator behavior. Sangeeta is from Central University of Kerala, and he has completed a PhD under the guidance of Dr. Sinu, and she has done a commendable study on the spatio-temporal variation in pollinator communities in agricultural landscape in Kerala and Karnataka. She has authored about 8 research papers and a book chapter, and including in Oikos, in scientific reports, Apidology, good journals. And she coordinates in Dr. Sinu's lab the Flower Watch program. So Sangeeta, is over to you. And yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir, for the introduction. So, hope I am audible and the slides are visible.
Yes, they are both. Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, all. Today I'm going to present the exploitation behavior in plant pollinator mutualism. So the title is Nectar Robbers Deter Legitimate Pollinators by Mutilating Flowers. So generally speaking, animals interact with a variety of plant species. So the interactions may be mutualistic like plant pollinator interactions and antagonistic like plant herbivores. So it is believed that the plant pollinator interactions are evolved from plant herbivorous interactions through some adaptations in both plants and animals. So in modern plant pollinator network, we can still observe some kind of herbivory in or like exploitation, nectar robbery and cheating behavior we can see. So normally in plant pollinator mutualism, the flower visitor accesses the rewards through the flower entrance, which assures the floral visitors contact to anther and stigma, which may lead to the successful pollination. But certain visitors deviate this general rule, and that visitors access the reward by an action of stealing in an illegitimate way. So the floral larceny is the general term used to describe such behavior, such abnormal behavior. So the floral larcenists include this nectar robbers, pollen thieves, and all. So among this, the nectar robbing is one more interesting. So what it actually does on flowers means the nectar robbers remove nectar from the corolla by piercing a hole or making slits by biting the corolla or chewing the floral parts, thus bypassing the normal flower opening that are usually used by the legitimate visitors. For that, they required some specific mouth parts to do such holes or slits on the corolla. And you can see from these images that the nectar robbed flowers are long, tubular, and some of the flowers are having some nectar spurs on it. And normally, a specialized pollinator, their structure should be compatible to the flower structure, morphology of the flower. So a non-specialized pollinator or the floral visitor in such scenario may behave like the nectar robbers. So the reason behind this nectar robbing, we can say it may be due to the mismatch between the structure of the